Hello, and welcome back to the Joy Within's podcast. Today, I want to talk about the relationship between having a clear intention and the goals that we set, and why I think this is absolutely essential when it comes to being able to set goals that feel authentic and aligned for us. I know for me, there have been so many goals that I've set in the past that I had basically because I thought I should have had them. And then because they weren't true to me, they weren't right for me, even if they sounded good, I inevitably just didn't follow through on them. So hopefully today's episode will help to save yourself from that. Hopefully it will help you to reframe and clarify your true goals. And I think that process starts by looking at intention. Welcome to The Joy Within. I'm Kyle Greenfield, and I believe that you have the ability to become calm, confident, and happy anytime that you choose. Some days, that's easier than others, but with the right tools and the right way of thinking, we can unlock incredible states of joy, peace, and well-being within us. So visit thejoywithin.org to get started today, so that together we can create a happier and more peaceful world. So last time, we talked about the idea of stepping into goals as a process of unveiling, as realizing that we already are our goals. And we looked at those goals as symbols for the energy that we hold. And in many ways, what I'm about to share today is kind of the opposite of that, because we're going to start with the internal intention and move from that inner world to the outer goal. So last time we started with the external goal, and then we moved within to look at the energy. I think both perspectives are valid, and personally, I like reflecting on my goals from both angles, as I always feel like it gives me a more complete, more unified vision for what it is I really want. So the process we're going to use today is to first clarify the intention that we want to set, and then see how that clear intention can lead us into a state of alignment, which leads to inspired action, and then how those actions can lead to the goals that we might set. I know this is basically the opposite of the way that we usually think about our goals. We usually think, here's the goal, now what actions must I take to get there? But as I said, that traditional process doesn't always lead us towards authentic goals. And when we aren't fully aligned with our goals, we create a lot of unnecessary resistance for ourselves. There's often a lot of inner conflict. We might not even be able to name it or even realize that it's there. We just feel like something's off. And that's a state that I call unconscious unhappiness, where there's this just invisible negative pull. We feel off-center, we feel held back, and we don't quite know why. And that resistance, that lack of alignment, means that we become more likely to give up along the way. And that risks sparking a negative spiral, where we set a goal, we don't achieve it, and then we lose self-esteem. Then we set a new goal, we don't achieve that goal either, and we lose more self-esteem. Over and over and over again, until we just kind of settle or burn out. Or at its worst, we just stop believing in ourselves altogether. I think the reason for this is we are often far too focused on the outcome that we say that we want from our goal. When we focus on the outcome, we set ourselves up for unnecessary stress, unnecessary worry and doubt and inner conflict. And broadly, I think that happens for two reasons. There are two pitfalls that are lurking behind so many of our goals. Those pitfalls are fear-based goals and ego-driven goals. By fear-based goals, I mean goals that are rooted in scarcity or anxiety. They sound like, I need this goal or else something bad will happen. Ego-driven goals, on the other hand, are goals that often sound good, but at their core, there's some sort of status or identity involved, which can take a lot of different forms. So sometimes that might be to impress others, or to live up to some societal expectation, some family expectation. And sometimes it's to uphold a part of our own identity, a part of ourselves that subconsciously we are not quite sure how we would live without. And I think if we're truly honest with ourselves, I think we would see that most of the normal goals that we set fall into one of these two categories. And often, these goals sound very logical. They're often very linear. They make sense, which I think is part of their appeal, part of why we focus on them so frequently. But at least for me, I've found that to get to the heart of what I really want, I have to step away from that mindset. I have to see that logical only goal as being fear or ego driven, because I can see the limitation in it more clearly. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have logical goals or that we shouldn't use a desired outcome to help us to set a goal. I'm saying that when we do, we have to be very clear about our true motivations, and we have to be crystal clear on whether or not those goals are actually authentic, whether they're actually right for us. And this is where starting with a clear intention can be really powerful. It starts from within, and then it moves without. So by intention here, I mean a state of being, a feeling that you can embody right now. It's something that you already are, if only you choose to focus on it. That's very different from a goal, which is external. At least to me, the word goal implies something that we don't yet have. And I want to be really clear on this distinction, because sometimes we use that word intention in place of the word goal. Like we might say something like, I intend to lose 10 pounds. But that's a goal. It's external, at least in the terms of the context that I mean here today. The intention is always internal. It's a feeling, an energy, sometimes a value that you can immediately step into. In that example of losing 10 pounds, the intention might be something like, I want to be healthy. I want to feel a sense of vitality or self-respect. Those are inner states, states of being, and you can tune into those states even if nothing in your physical world has changed. So I want to walk you through the process that I use to derive a goal from intention, rather than a fear-driven or an ego-driven mindset. And this is very, very simple. But before we do, I encourage you to take a moment right now just to reflect on whether or not your goal falls into one of those two traps. So to do that, pick a goal that you have for yourself and just start asking questions about it. So focus on questions like, is this goal arbitrary? Is it fear-based? Sometimes that answer is really, really obvious. As soon as you think about it, you say, oh yeah, that's just a fear, or that's just my ego talking. But if you're not sure, then you can take this a step further by framing the question by assuming that the goal is either fear or ego-driven. So for example, you assume there's a fear lurking within it, and you ask something like, what fear must I hold in order to have set this goal? And I find that to be a really powerful question, because our ego goals, too, are often just inner fears. So for example, let's say I have a goal to earn a certain income. If I ask, what fear must I hold in order to believe that I must earn that amount of money? And if my answer is something like, well, if I don't earn that, then I won't be able to pay the mortgage, I might lose the house, I'll be out on the street, things like that, then that's fear-based. The goal is derived from bad things that might happen if you don't hit it. But if the answer is, well, if I don't earn that money, then I won't be reaching my potential. I won't be living up to myself. Well, then that's an ego-driven goal. There's an identity issue behind that. Subconsciously, the mind thinks, I should be the type of person who earns X. And if I don't earn that, I lose a part of myself. Do you see the difference? You can apply this same question to just about any goal that you have. And I'll give you one more, because another question that I love to ask myself is, does this goal just sound good, or does it feel right? This question then leads you into starting to point your attention towards the feeling that you want to create for yourself, because it leads to asking, well, if that goal doesn't feel right, what does? And thinking in that way starts to flip the script to help you focus more on the intention, the inner state, than the outer goal. Hey guys, so I know it can take some time for these ideas to sink in, and I know that can be frustrating, especially if you're going through a tough time right now. So if as you're listening, you're thinking, okay, but how do I do that? How do I actually make this work for me? Then we should chat. I've started taking on a handful of coaching clients. We'll work one-on-one to help you apply these strategies to whatever it is that you're dealing with right now. You'll start to feel calmer, more confident, and more in control as you go about each day. So if that's you, head over to thejoywithin.org to schedule a free call. Otherwise, back to the show. So focus on one goal that you have, and then let that goal fade for a moment. And start to focus more clearly on the feeling that you want to embody. What energy do you want to hold? Do you want to feel joy, peace, enthusiasm, clarity, worth, purpose, health, vitality, whatever it is. And if you're not sure, you can look at your values. What values do you want to express? Do you want to express kindness, courage, integrity, independence, strength? Pick something that resonates with you and try to feel into what you really want. I always find for me that it helps to close my eyes here and to imagine into that version of myself. I imagine that I already am the person who embodies that energy. I already have the traits that I seek to express. They're there within me. I don't have to create them. I don't have to go find them or learn them or develop them. I just have to draw them out, to focus on them, to point towards them, and then allow them to flow through me. Once that clicks, it's such a natural, such an effortless process. If I become internally those values, that energy, then it seems natural to me that that person, the me who is already that state, already knows what actions to take. He just does them. It's just part of who he is. So imagine into that person, really feel into it, and then ask yourself, what actions does that person take? When something happens, how does that person respond? So let's walk through this using that example I gave earlier about losing 10 pounds. So we start with asking questions. So we might ask, what fear must be lurking there? Is it a fear of not being well, of being at a higher risk for diabetes or heart disease or whatever? Or is it a concern about what other people will think when you show up at that beach wedding in a few months? Is it a concern about what you will think about yourself if you don't look a certain way? In what way is that fear-driven versus ego-driven? Or you might ask, does the goal just sound good? Like, why 10 pounds? It sounds like a nice round number. But when you think about it, 10 pounds itself is actually somewhat arbitrary, right? And to be clear, I'm not trying to say that losing 10 pounds is a bad goal, not by any means. The questions aren't about judging the goal. They're not about declaring that it's either good or bad. They're about clarifying the core intention that you have behind it. Because if we become clear on that intention first, then the goal will actually arise naturally. And this is the second half of that process. Because stepping into the person who is already the core intention will naturally lead us into the right actions for us. And right action will always lead to the results that are in alignment with it. So the goal just sort of emerges from the state of being because the intention leads us into action and the action lead us into the result. So instead of having a goal to lose 10 pounds, which just sort of sounds good, if we focus on the intention to be the healthy person, to live from a point of vitality and well-being, then what actions would arise from that? If we imagine into it, if we imagine into the person who is already that healthy person, then we can see that that person doesn't have to try to lose weight. They don't have to try to go on a diet or try to get to the gym today. It just happens. They move more because that's what feels right to them. They don't eat junk because they are aware of how that food makes them feel. So they're not trying not to eat fast food. They just don't want it. That person will naturally become the weight that's right for them. And maybe that does mean losing 10 pounds, but maybe not. I mean, why not 9 or 11? Focusing on being the healthy person, the body will just know what to do. It will know what it needs. And it will naturally move into that healthy state. And we can apply this for any of our goals. I believe that there is a greater part of ourselves that just knows, a part that is expanding us and evolving through us in ways that consciously we cannot understand. And when we focus on moving into alignment with that, we don't have to understand. We don't have to plan out every single action or every single outcome that we aim for. We just have to focus on entering into a state of flow from which the core essence of our desires will flow forth. The clear intention leads us into aligned action, and the aligned action leads to the results that are right for us. So I want to wrap up today with a quote that I love by Khalil Gibran, who's the author of the book The Prophet, which, if you haven't read, phenomenal book. He writes, "When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Let me repeat that. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. And then a few moments later, he writes, work is love made visible. And if by work here, we think of any action towards a goal, we can see that he's talking about the energy that we place into our every movement. If we move forward from a state of love, from a state of joy and well-being, then the motion towards our goal becomes the symphony that we seek to create. The intention expressed in action is the essence of the goal, much more so than achieving or attaining or completing any one specific, usually arbitrary thing. Work is love made visible. So ask yourself, if I am that love, if I am that perfect health or awesome abundance or ineffable joy, how do I embody that? What flows from me when I step into that state? And try just letting that idea be your point of focus for a while. And see if you don't find that those things that we call goals don't just start to feel, well, just a little bit more effortless for you. Work is love made visible. Step into the intention and allow the action to flow forth. Thank you so much for your time and your presence here today. Know that I love you and I appreciate you wherever you are. And if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please do me a favor and share. I don't know about you, but whenever I look at the news these days, I just think, how is this our world? Like, how have we come to this? We have to be better. All of us. And I can't help but think, if we just knew our own well-being, if we just knew the power of our focus, the power of thinking and acting from a higher version of ourselves, then we would all be in a better state. And I believe that starts with each and every single one of us, and it just ripples out. And one by one, that shift in focus, that embodiment of what we know is right, what we know is joyful and loving and compassionate and strong, that embodiment will guide us into a happier and a more peaceful world. And I think that happens personally, and I think it will happen globally. I know for me, I have to believe that that is true, and I hope you do as well. So please, just do whatever it takes to step into that ideal that you hold for yourself today, and just spread joy in whatever way feels right for you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to The Joy Within. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do what you can to spread the word. I believe that we all deserve to feel calm, confident, and happy literally every single day. But with everything that's going on in the world, we need to work together to remind ourselves of that in as many little ways as we can. So please, pass this along to the people you care about. Email a friend, share it on social, do whatever feels right for you, so that hopefully, together, we can create a little more peace in our crazy modern world.